Hi, I'm Paige.
And I'm Manuel.
And I'm Abbie, and for our group project, we decided to focus on albinism. Albinism is a genetic condition that reduces the amount of melanin pigment in the skin, hair, and/or eyes. And it affects the development of optic nerves oftentimes, which can lead to vision problems. Signs and symptoms of albinism include increased sensitivity to sunlight, which can lead to increased probability of skin cancer development, white, reddish, brown, or yellow hair color, light-colored skin and irregular skin pigmentation, lack of pigment in irises, and vision problems, including nystagmus, strabismus, photophobia, astigmatism, misrouting of the optic nerve, and legal blindness. So how is albinism caused? It is caused by a mutation in one of the genes that provides instructions for making proteins involved in the production of melanin. And there are different types of albinism that can occur based on which gene mutation caused the disorder. For example, in one type of albinism, OA1, changes in cell signaling can occur, more specifically in the G protein coupled receptors, and this can cause disruptions in retinal development, which are commonly attributed to albinism-related vision problems. How is albinism inherited? It is inherited through a recessive gene, meaning a child must receive a copy from both parents. The most common form of albinism is caused by a mutation on the TYR gene, which the TYR gene's function is to synthesize melanin pigment. There are 7 forms of oculocutaneous albinism, and these 7 forms are all autosomal recessive, but there are 3 forms of sex-linked albinism, and these include ocular albinism, which is inherited from the mother with the gene on the X chromosome, Francois de Roque syndrome, and Ziprikowski syndrome. Here you can see an example of a pedigree showing the inheritance of albinism. You can see that it's transmitted through recessive genes.
Now for the treatments of albinism. The short answer is there are no treatments for albinism, but there are things that people with the disorder can do that will help with aspects of their albinism. And first, people can protect their eyes and skin from the sun, and this includes wearing sunscreen and sunglasses, and also long clothes that keep the skin out of direct sunlight exposure. Skin cancer is more common, so regular skin cancer screening is a good idea. And lastly, eyesight problems can be helped with prescription eyeglasses or even surgery. Albinism can usually be diagnosed from a baby's appearance right when they are born, and the visual clues include missing pigment in their hair, skin, and eyes. Some other ways to diagnose is that an optometrist can detect albinism by giving a thorough eye examination, and they look for a variety of issues such as nystagmus, strabismus, photophobia, which are all things that can occur in individuals with albinism. Lastly, electrodiagnostic testing can be used to help diagnose the problem, and this is where small electrodes are stuck to the patient's scalp to test the connections of the eyes to the part of the brain that controls vision. Now for the prevalence of albinism. According to the World Health Organization, 1 in 20,000 people have albinism globally. In a tribe in Panama and Colombia, about 1 in 6,000 people have the condition, and in sub-Saharan and Eastern Africa, 1 in 5,000 people have it. So albinism is much more common in Africa. Approximately 1 out of every 8 people in Africa carry the gene for albinism, and this results in an occurrence of 1 out of 2,000 people having albinism. That rate is 10 times higher than that of other places in the world. And this occurs because rural tribes have a more isolated genetic pool and the societies are less mobile.
So the research article we chose is written by 2 dermatologists in Brazil, and they aim to study psychosocial factors and other factors that affect albinism. So as we mentioned previously, albinism is caused by an absence or decrease of melanin, Melanin is a polymer pigment that provides protection against solar radiation and oxidative damage to DNA. Melanin is synthesized via an enzymatic reaction where the tyrosinase enzyme converts tyrosine into melanin. However, there are two common mutations that exist, OCA1A and OCA1B. The OCA1A mutation leads to a non-functional tyrosinase enzyme, meaning that there is no production of melanin. The OCA1B mutation leads to a semi-functional tyrosinase enzyme, which means that there is limited presence of melanin. So individuals with the OCA1A and OCA1B mutation, in other words, albinism, have an increased chance of developing skin cancer. And that is because they don't have the pigment that protects them from solar radiation. So therefore, the solar radiation results in DNA damaging by substituting specific nucleotides. It induces a mutation in p53, making it dysfunctional, and it also leads to unchecked G1 and G2 checkpoints, a loss in the cell cycle control, and even apoptosis, thus resulting in the unregulated cell cycle, otherwise known as cancer. The cancer is most likely seen on the skin or on the neck, on the head or on the neck. The genetics, as of now, there are 19 genes that are linked to albinism. Albinism is a homozygous condition with a 100% chance of transmission of the defective gene. So if a couple with an albino child produces another child, they have a 25% chance of having another child with albinism. They have a 50% chance of having children who are carriers of the gene, and they have a 25% chance that their children will be non-carriers of the gene. The prevalence, 1 in 20,000 individuals worldwide have albinism. As we mentioned earlier, it's more prevalent in areas that struggle with geographical mobility, suffer from environmental factors, and socioeconomic struggles such as limited access to medical health care. The Kuna tribe, specifically in Panama and Colombia, has albinism at a rate of 6.3 cases per 1,000. South Africa, Tanzania, and Nigeria also have similar rates of albinism. And areas closer to the equator, such as Brazil with high ultraviolet radiation indexes, have a higher rate of skin cancer because of the exposure to the sunlight. Some common side effects are that in Nigeria, the albino individuals avoid social situations because they are emotionally unstable about their appearance, and they are often discriminated by superstitious beliefs. Because of this, a lot of them aren't able to get medical health care attention, and the ones that do have skin cancer are often diagnosed with skin cancer 14 to 26 months after the first signs of skin cancer. Of these people with skin cancer, only 40% continue with cancer treatment. Another study in Nigeria and Tanzania showed that only a few albinos survive beyond the age of 30 years because by then they have developed skin cancer. So this flowchart shows how different factors affect the chance of albinos getting skin cancer in regions such as Nigeria. So the environmental factors, the regions on the equator have high UVR indexes, meaning more exposure to sunlight, geographical mobility. Often medical facilities are hard to access by road because of a lack of infrastructure. Economic factors, often the affordability of treatment, and even education. They have a lack of knowledge on albinism and the effects with the sun exposure, and that all leads to an increased chance of skin cancer. Thank you for listening to our presentation on albinism.